Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. So I'd like to expand upon a thought I had last night about this idea that a lot of people in the monk community have, that having any relationships with women is gynocentric or at least supporting gynocentrism. Thus, the only way to not be gynocentric is to not have any association with women whatsoever. Now, what I think this stems from is an over-application of gynocentrism. So before we talk about gynocentrism, what it is and what it isn't, let's actually define our terms. Now, when feminists bring out the dictionary definition, of course, reality doesn't match the dictionary definition, and there are other definitions that people use throughout the internet to describe feminism. So let's look at various definitions of gynocentrism from across the internet, including Urban Dictionary. These include mainstream and pro-male sources, and they are very consistent. And this will demonstrate how some people are over-applying the term gynocentrism to mean anything that isn't androcentric. If it doesn't benefit men exclusively, it's gynocentric. Anyway, these slides were taken from an older video. I'll post a link in the description. Wikipedia and gynocentrism.com define gynocentrism as, quote, refers to a dominant or exclusive focus on women in theory or practice, or to the advocacy of this. Anything can be considered gynocentric when it is concerned exclusively with a female, or specifically a feminist point of view. Merriam-Webster defines gynocentric as, quote, dominated by or emphasizing feminine interest or a feminine point of view. Dictionary.com and the book Gynocentrism From Feudalism to Modern Disney Princesses defines gynocentrism as, quote, focused on women, concerned with only women. The Oxford Dictionary defines gynocentrism as, quote, centered on or concerned exclusively with women, taking a female or specifically a feminist point of view. Wordnik, allwords.com, and yourdictionary.com define gynocentrism as, quote, an ideological focus on females and issues affecting them, possibly to the detriment to non-females, contrast with androcentrism. Psychology Wiki defines gynocentrism as, quote, the practice, often consciously adopted, of placing female human beings at the center of one's view of the world, and its culture and history, and assuming the existence and dominance of a female point of view. Finally, there are two definitions from Urban Dictionary which define gynocentrism as, quote, the practice, conscious or otherwise, of asserting a female or specifically a feminist point of view, and placing at the center of a political, social, family, or gender context, potentially to the detriment of non-females. The perceptions, needs, and desires of women have primacy in this system, where the female view is the reference point or lens through which matters are analyzed. Alternatively, the second most popular definition from Urban Dictionary is, quote, always putting women first, even if it is to the detriment of others, often results in female supremacy, unquote. So you can tell through these various definitions, they're pretty consistent. If you're concerned only with women, you're being gynocentric. However, that doesn't mean there's only androcentrism and gynocentrism. What if you're equally concerned with both men and women? What if you're taking into account the needs of men and the needs of women at the same time? That cannot be gynocentric. By definition, that is not gynocentric if you're considering men. If you're trying to find a mutually beneficial balance between men and women, that by definition is not gynocentric. So the question then becomes, when does a relationship with a woman stop becoming one of mutual benefit and start becoming gynocentric? I believe it's when the man stops benefiting, or at least benefits far less than he contributes. So when it comes to social systems, and I just created a quick graphic, you have androcentrism on the left, you have gynocentrism on the right. Starting on the left towards androcentrism, you have a hard patriarchy, where men just rule. Women are basically property. In the middle, you have a soft patriarchy. In a soft patriarchy, both needs of men and women are balanced. Further to the right, towards gynocentrism, you have egalitarianism. Further still, you have feminism. And feminism is pretty much as gynocentric as you can be. Now, obviously, you can compare the different waves. The feminist agenda results in everything being about the needs and perspective of the woman. Now, I can just see someone in the comment section saying that egalitarianism isn't gynocentric, egalitarianism is about equality, therefore it should be in the middle. But you're wrong, and I'll tell you why. Why egalitarianism is gynocentric. Egalitarianism is a form of equal outcomes rather than a form of equal opportunity, regardless of what the proponents believe. There are many people who claim to be egalitarian who denounce equal outcomes, but by the fact that they are egalitarian, they do endorse equal outcomes. And here's what I mean by that. Egalitarianism is based on gender equality, even though in society men bear far more responsibility than women. And in the past, in a soft patriarchy, and in a hard patriarchy obviously, men enjoyed authority because of that responsibility. I've made this point many times, but just consider it like you're a business owner. You bear all the responsibility for that business, but you have authority over that business because you have that responsibility. Responsibility and authority go hand in hand. What does egalitarianism do? It gives women equal rights with men without the responsibility. It equalizes the outcomes of that responsibility, and it robs men of their just authority. Now, some might argue that women having equal rights isn't the problem. It's the fact that women don't have equal responsibility is the problem. And I would agree with you. The problem is you can't make women equally responsible to men. They're not physically, mentally, or emotionally capable of it. Do you want to draft women into the military? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Well, let's move on to the next one, taxes. Men are the only ones who pay a net tax. Even though women work, they get every dollar they've ever paid in taxes returned to them in the form of various benefits. Women simply work less because they have kids. And in fact, as more women enter the workforce, they have fewer kids. The West is now below replacement levels in terms of fertility precisely because women are entering the workforce rather than having children. So even if you could make men and women equally responsible, it would only result in the extinction of your society. Because as women are going out and fighting wars and earning their own money and all that fun stuff, they're not having kids, your fertility rate drops below replacement and your society gets overrun with either immigrants or it just slowly dies out. So much for your society. It's not even necessarily women's fault. It's simply a product of the reproductive dynamic. Even if women could be made equally intelligent and capable as men in every industry they ever wanted to go into, they would still have to have the babies. Thus, you wouldn't want them working. You wouldn't want them fighting in wars, because who's going to have the babies? Who's going to keep your society churning along for another generation? So these responsibilities will always fall on men. As long as humans are a sexually reproducing species, as long as men produce sperm and women produce eggs and they grow the babies in their tummies, this is the way it's going to be. However, even though men are essentially doomed to being responsible for women, they at least used to enjoy authority over those women. But once you have egalitarianism, they take that authority away from men and give it to women. And say, look, now you're equal. Isn't this wonderful? But the problem is the man is still responsible, and the outcomes have been equalized. So egalitarianism is an ideology of equal outcomes, and it opens the door wide open for feminism. Because how can you oppose equal outcomes going forward if you endorse egalitarianism? And now we're in like the fourth wave feminism, and they want equal outcomes in everything. They want women to be paid the same even if they work less and drop out of the workforce for years to raise children. They want women with gender studies degrees to get paid as much as scientists. It's bullshit. However, you gave them rights without them earning it in the first place. Why should they expect anything to be any different? If you're going to give them voting rights and reproductive rights without any of the responsibility, why should you now, in 2017, be calling for them to take responsibility for their actions, when you never demanded that for the last 100 years of 3 previous waves of feminism? Now, to the main point of this video, a mutually beneficial relationship with a woman is not and cannot be, by definition, gynocentric. Because even though the man is providing his role as a protector and provider, he has authority over his family. However, it's important to know that this is not possible until after the collapse. Do not try to start a family with a woman in a gynocentric society. There is no way for you to do that safely. This is why things like surrogate mothers, artificial wombs, sex robots, these are why there's so much demand for these technologies. It's a way for men to regain authority over their own families. Because if you have sex with women and have children with them, they can take them, take your money, there's nothing you can do about it. Absolutely nothing you can do about it. So this healthy relationship of mutual benefit does not exist in modern times, in a modern gynocentric society. However, does this mean you need to cut all women out? You can never date or have a one-night stand or anything like that? Not necessarily. Because if you casually date or have short-term relationships, you can negate most of the downsides. And I emphasize most because there's one huge downside that's getting worse that you can't negate. However, let's look at the positives. First of all, never get married or let her move in, because different countries and provinces and states have different laws regarding common law marriage or de facto marriage. If you let your girlfriend move in, a couple months or a couple years, and then you break up, she gets half your shit. Always wear a condom or get a vasectomy. Never believe her when she says she's on the pill or can't get pregnant. Now, in the early stages of a relationship, the sex will be good. She's going to be eager, she's going to be trying to please you, she's going to be hiding most of her flaws. She's going to be putting her best face forward because she wants you to fall in love with her. Now, once she has her hooks in you, she can let the mask drop. But for right now, especially in the early stages of a relationship, it's going to be the best it's going to ever be. Now, there's one thing you are vulnerable to, and that is a false rape or abuse allegation from the woman. There is no way to protect yourself. If you're engaged with a woman and it turns out she's crazy and she wants to destroy your life, she will destroy your life. And for me, because I was falsely accused of rape in the past, it's not worth it to me. However, inherently, this is not inherently gynocentric, because you're benefiting about as much as you're paying. You're getting sex, you're getting pleasant female companionship for very minimal input. You're not signing any contracts, you're not paying off her student loans, you're not getting her pregnant. You're getting most of the benefits with very little cost. I would say it's a relationship of mutual benefit. But the risks are high. So turning back to our previous chart, we have mutual benefit high risk and mutual benefit low risk. So your high risk options are casual dating and short-term relationships. Your low risk options are call girls, Asian massage parlors, that sort of thing. Now both of these are based on mutual benefit. With the call girls and the massage parlors, you're giving them money in exchange for them satisfying you sexually. There's nothing wrong with that. That's essentially what you're doing in any relationship. You're providing her resources and utility, and she's giving you sex and companionship. And at least if you're casually dating and only engaging in short-term relationships, you're negating the worst parts of a gynocentric society. As the relationship goes on, things are going to change. She's going to change. And it's in her best interest to do so. If you are clearly committed to not marrying her, she probably needs to fuck off and find someone who will, because her window of fertility is going to close. She's going to get less and less attractive by the years. If you're not going to provide for her for the rest of her life, she needs to find a man who will before she gets too ugly. You enjoy the ride while it lasts, and when it's over, you move on. She moves on. Everybody's happy. Again, you need to be extremely careful about if this woman's a psycho. If she feels like she gave you her best years, and then you didn't marry her, she may fucking kill you. That's what happened with Jodi Arias. I'll put a picture of her on the screen. So Jodi Arias was dating some guy. He's like a hotshot motivational speaker. Made good money. She just threw sex at him for months. They had a whirlwind, extremely passionate and sexual romance. When he eventually dumped her for another woman, she basically lured him to a location to have sex with him, and then she murdered him in the shower. And in her mind, she was thinking, I gave him all this sex and he did not marry me. I was entitled to a ring. I was entitled to have this man for the rest of my life. And because he didn't want to put a ring on it, he didn't want to commit, and I gave him all this sex, I'm now justified in murdering him. Now, obviously the court didn't feel that way. She was convicted, but she wasn't sentenced to death, even though this is clearly premeditated because she's an attractive woman. What are you going to do? Anyway, I say this because you need to be cognizant of the risks of casual dating and short-term relationships, or relationships in general. However, there is nothing in the definition of gynocentrism to say that a man can't accept risks. Gynocentrism is about the needs and perspective of the women being central, the man just who gives a shit about what the man wants. In a short-term relationship or in casual dating, what the man wants matters. This is not gynocentric. Unless you're a simp, if you just give in to the woman and give her everything she wants for some pity sex, yeah, you're being a simp. Stop it. But there's nothing inherently gynocentric about casually dating or engaging in short-term relationships, but it is risky. There's nothing in the definition of gynocentrism saying that a man must negate risk. So, because we're talking about risk, it's up to that individual man to decide if he's willing to assume those risks. Now, personally, I'm not. But that's because I've been burned in the past. It's the whole once bitten, twice shy thing. But if you are a MGTOW who casually dates, who engages in short-term relationships, enjoys the good parts, the early parts, and then cuts the bitch loose when she gets a little bit crazy, gets a little bit too needy and naggy. That's not gynocentric. You do have to worry about false rape or false abuse allegations. You have to worry about her sperm jacking you. There are clear risks, but not inherently gynocentric. Thus, I leave it up to the individual man to make that risk assessment for himself, because value is ultimately subjective. If you're a young guy, if your dick is in the driver's seat, if you gots to get laid, and you're willing to assume those risks, fair enough. I'm not going to say you're not a MGTOW. As long as you make sure that mutual benefit is enforced, you're not just simping on some bitch to get laid. As long as you're receiving at least as much as you're contributing, that's not gynocentric. But you have to be very careful, because even short-term relationships and casual dating can very quickly become gynocentric. When you start putting more into the relationship than you're getting out, it's time to leave. It's time to cut her loose, or just enjoy some quiet time without a woman. Sex is not the end-all be-all of human existence. But as I've said many times, it's all about self-actualization. It's about what makes you happy. But be aware of mutual benefit so that the relationship doesn't become gynocentric. And if it starts to slip that way, it's time to cut her loose. Simple as that. And to the monks out there who say that if you engage with women at all, you're not a real MGTOW because you're feeding gynocentrism, well, by paying your taxes in a Western society, you are also feeding gynocentrism, because the gynocentric government is using your tax dollars, funneling it to women and other gynocentric endeavors. So unless you're willing to live out in the woods and risk being arrested for tax evasion, you're supporting gynocentrism. If living in a society means supporting gynocentrism, the benefits outweigh the cost. By going MGTOW, you're protecting yourself from the vast majority of the worst aspects of gynocentrism. Now, you can go to some traditional third world country, but you're also going to miss out on things like modern medicine, running water, stuff like that. It's probably not worth it. I would much rather live in the United States, where I have things like the internet and technology, modern medicine, running water, all that stuff, even though I know my tax dollars are going to support gynocentrism, because my life is made better by living in a first world country. So the standard cannot be simply supporting the gynocentric system. It has to be about mutual benefit, because by definition that is what gynocentrism is. If a relationship is mutually beneficial, it is not gynocentric. Stop over-applying gynocentrism. Gynocentrism is not anything that benefits women, even if it also benefits men. If it benefits men as well, it's not gynocentric. It's when it exclusively benefits women, at men's expense. And gynocentrism is real. I'm just saying that people are over-applying it. So just stop. Anyway, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.